Well, there you go. That tells the story of Florence over the past 12 days. Hope you enjoyed that. We've got a lot of diehard weather enthusiasts and a few professionals on here, and that's for you. That doesn't exist anywhere on the internet. Put that together about 2 hours ago. So anyway, that shows the Dvorak curve for Florence, and we're cloudy in our area. We've only got 74 degrees, and let me show you real quickly Florence there. Yeah, so you see this corresponds to uniform shadings of cloud temperature. So we can compare this with other historical cases and see what's going on. And this is showing us the rapid transformation of Florence in the past 24 hours. Rapidly came up from Cat 1, Cat 2 yesterday, up to a Category 4 storm, up to 140 miles an hour, some rapid strengthening just in the past 6 or 7 hours. Let me show you the maps. We'll take a look at NHC's layout here, and yeah, hurricane hunters reported or measured 120 knot winds in that storm just this afternoon. We've mentioned the rapid intensification, and there's a good chance this could be up near Category 5 tomorrow. And there it is, Florence, 140 miles an hour on that, and pressure rapidly dropping down to 939 millibars. And once we get below 940, we're getting into serious territory there. And some of the strongest storms on record have been kind of in the ballpark of 890 to 920. So we're getting down there quite a bit. The forecast track of Florence, I don't really need to embellish this much. NHC's got this pretty well in hand. We're going to look at the dynamical models to kind of show you the small uncertainty on the storm as it approaches North Carolina there. But as you can see, it's going to be M for major hurricane all the way into southern North Carolina. So that's probably going to come on shore somewhere around Wilmington. That's what it appears at this time. And then you can see a kind of a slowdown in the track. See very fast movement there, 12 hours of movement, covering about 300 miles or so. And then it starts slowing down quite a bit as it comes up on a ridge that's going to be in place over the eastern U.S. And when we see a major hurricane slowing down like that, down to a crawl, that means torrential rains. And we're expecting well over 10 inches in a lot of areas and a couple of spots of 15. And I found these precip totals to be a little bit low. I think we may see some isolated 15s and 20s depending on what the speed actually turns out to be later on Wednesday and Thursday. Somebody firing up a chainsaw out there. All right, yeah, let's take a look at a couple of other storms. The big wild card is Isaac, which is heading west towards the Leeward Islands there. We're keeping that, or NHC is keeping that pretty much at Category 1 strength as it approaches the islands, so it's not going to be as bad as what we had with the hurricanes in this region last year. And then things get very uncertain as it gets out in the Caribbean. The dynamical models, they tend to diverge. Some of the European models are taking it north, the GFS going for pretty much a straight trend into the Caribbean, somewhat like that. And there's still probably a week or two before we have to start thinking of the Gulf. So depending on what happens here, there's still a possibility this could get into the Gulf and cause problems, but we'll just have to wait and see on that. I'm not going to go too much further into that. And Helene, that's going to be recurving up towards the Azores. And I almost ended up living in the Azores back when I was about 11 or 12. Got orders there, and they got changed to the Philippines. My dad was in the military, and that would have been interesting to be there in the Azores. Some very unusual weather in that area. Also, out in the Pacific, we've got Olivia starting to get close to Hawaii there, and let's look at the track on that. This is a Category 1 storm, and you can see it's going to fall off rapidly to a tropical storm, but even with that, it's still going to have significant precipitable water in and around the core of that, so we can expect flooding in the southeastern half of Hawaii. And you can see a tropical storm watch for the Honolulu area, so they're going to be on the north fringe of that. And most of the problems are going to be down towards the Big Island there. And that's going to be moving quickly through. Anyway, back to Florence, since that's probably going to be somewhat of a historic storm, especially if it touches Category 5. This is the latest satellite image, updated about 10 minutes ago there. And that's showing the very strong symmetrical cloud bands, starting to look pretty much like a classic storm like Katrina or Irma. And we're seeing pretty much a steady west-northwest movement, and we'll kind of keep track on that tomorrow. And we're probably going to do a special landfall webcast on Wednesday or Thursday, depending on when that comes ashore there. We're going to get back into the fine points of the track with the dynamical models in just a little bit, but let's just kind of go over the rest of the country. Let me see how things are looking in chat. Let's see, we got Carl Berghoff, Shirley Keast, David Lumbert there in Arkansas. Thomas Copeland watching Florence, Adam Davis reporting chilly conditions in Indiana. And Lexi Walsh reminding to hit the like button. That is appreciated. Willie Greenway there in Georgia. Hopefully we'll be missing out on some of that damaging track is going just north of there, thankfully. Andrew Hotchkiss also watching the weather. Moonchild 38, hello in North Carolina. Stay safe there. Ryan Toomey's also joining us. Countdown to landfall has begun. Carl Berghoff says, remember to like. Thomas Copeland chiming in on that hurricane discussion there. And Ryan reporting water temperatures consistent all the way to the coastline, and they are definitely up there. Everybody better pay attention now in the vicinity of North Carolina. That's from Ryan there, and yeah, that's good advice. All right, let's head into the forecast. This will be a slightly short weathercast since we're kind of off schedule. Normally we do Sunday, Tuesday, and Thursday, but we're going to fill in a few days due to the very active patterns developing with these hurricanes here. All right, let me get my windows back in place here. Let's just look at the upper level chart and use that as our springboard there. Weather patterns have kind of died down a little bit in the central U.S., and you can see this bit of troughing across the central U.S. This is up at 250 millibars, which is about 34,000 feet. And usually when we see this troughing, that's indicative of a cold air mass in the lower levels. And, of course, temperatures are pretty cool, about 15, 20 degrees, probably 15 degrees below normal. So probably a bit of a polar high across the Midwest there. And we can see ridging on the East Coast. And the opposite is true. Usually ridges like that are built by warm air in the low levels. And probably what we've got going on, maybe a little bit of a high off the coast and maybe some warm air advection, some south or southwest winds flowing up into the northeast U.S. and helping to build that ridge aloft. Got a new jet coming in from the Pacific Northwest, and there it is right there. There's the jet coming into Washington and Montana. Got a trough offshore ridge here, so possibly a frontal system set up like that right there. Let me go ahead and draw the fronts for you. Warm front, possibly across the northern Rockies there, and a cold front possibly coming into Oregon and Washington. So we'll look at the thickness chart and see if that's actually the case. And we should find the surface low right there around Washington somewhere. And, of course, the troughing back behind the cold front, of course, caused by cold air. So everything kind of fits together. We look at the upper level charts, the surface charts, and we try to find consistency in the vertical. So we can put everything together and see if it makes sense, and if not, that's a good clue that we need to start looking at other stuff, other charts. Okay, here's the thickness chart. You can see Florence starting to appear there in the corner. There's the big polar high on its way out, 1034 millibar high. And indeed, yeah, it looks like we got warm air advection in New York and New England there. And here's the new cold front coming in from the northwest U.S. Looks like it's a little faster than what I had thought on the previous chart. On the other hand, that chart was for 6 a.m. this morning. We don't have the latest one, but anyway, yeah, that fits together. That front that we had placed right there looks like that's continued on into the northern Rockies. So anyway, that's going to be continuing its journey eastward, and then we see a pretty good chunk of cold air way up in northern Canada. Things have been really interesting up there lately, and this is the core of the cold air right there around Cambridge Bay, and leading edge of the cold front, kind of like that. That's a very strong cold front, and that's barreling south into Saskatchewan and Alberta. So looking for a bit of a cold snap coming up for the Canadian prairies over the next couple of days. Also precipitable water, the cold air that we've had moving into the central U.S., that's taken a toll on the moisture and pushed it south into Louisiana and Mississippi and into southeast Texas right there. And we can see the anticyclonic flow around that high. So this is our polar high sitting over Missouri, producing some cold weather right there. On the east side, we've got the northerly flow helping to drive that front into Kentucky and Tennessee. And on the other side, we've got overrunning. So that's anticyclonic flow around that high coming up over the front and giving us some of the clouds that you saw in the opening part of the webcast. Okay, so let's see. Let's continue on and look at the satellite. We'll just kind of go through this very quickly since there's not much going on across the U.S. Anyway, that's the national look right there. Got a little bit of weather there, as we've mentioned, in the northwest. This right here is likely the baroclinic system. See that right there? That's probably painting out a cold front, maybe extending into Nevada like that, and maybe a warm front like that. And let's go down to the southwest U.S. Monsoon pattern kind of dying down. Don't see much anvil cloud in the Four Corners area. Most of that's in Old Mexico. Northern Plains looking good. We know that that polar high is out over Missouri. So probably a light southerly flow, kind of dry across the northern plains. And then down in Texas, that cold front is down in this area right here, and we've got a bit of that overrunning. And then we'll head down into the southeast U.S., where it's dark already. Yeah, lots of clouds in that area. And a lot of that's because of the high that's offshore. We've got the warm, moist advection coming up into the Pennsylvania and New York area. And let's head down to the southeast U.S. Dark there also. But we've had a few thunderstorms going up. The sea breeze looks to be active along the coast right there. And let's see. Yeah, looks like some sort of old frontal boundary coming down into Georgia and Alabama there. And we've got things kind of active in the Gulf. Let's run this. Yeah, look at that. Looks like a bit of a weak tropical cyclone, perhaps, south of Cuba there. Let me stop that image and let you get a good look at that. There it is right there. You can see the dry slot coming into the south side of that right there. Probably the center of the circulation off Belize, maybe southeast of Cancun. So that's going to be slowly drifting up into the Gulf. That could have an effect on the weather in probably a few days here. So that'll be another thing to watch. Okay, let me see. I'm kind of going through my mind trying to figure out if we forgot anything. I think that's probably all the key things. So let's go ahead and head into the forecast, and we'll look at some of the dynamical models there. Starting out for the short term for Texas, got a little bit of that overrunning, cool air at the surface coming south. In aloft, we've, like at 850 millibars, we've got a little bit of a weak southerly flow. And when that kind of flow is moist and ascending, we tend to get a lot of stratocumulus developing across Texas. Anyway, looks like a few isolated showers probably embedded in that with that overrunning, and that'll be spreading them northward into the DFW area probably tomorrow morning. Okay, this is kind of interesting. This is the 500 millibar chart. This is from the GFS. This is how it looks right now, and we can see that troughing there in the Pacific Northwest. There's Florence. It's vertically stacked, so it shows up very well at 500 millibars. So we can kind of watch where that goes. And up north, we can see that polar vortex dug in there across Nunavut and Northwest Territories, and there's that strong northerly flow on the west side. So that would be a very wintry pattern if it was November or December. So running that forward, let's look for changes. Well, we see a very strong subtropical high. There it is right there, and that's having an influence on the movement of the storm. And it's trying to penetrate northwest, and it's going to be getting into this ridge right here, and that's going to slow it down quite a bit. You can see the prevailing westerlies are well to the north. So that's not going to really help much with the forward movement. So getting into Wednesday and Thursday, you can see the track. GFS kind of touches around maybe south of Cape Hatteras there. It brings it offshore and then brings it right into the Wilmington area. So the path that I showed you, GFS is going for kind of a loop-de-loop like that. So I don't know if that's actually going to pan out, but the European model is not forecasting that. It's bringing it straight in, and I'm going to go ahead and show that to you here shortly and show you the solutions there from DCMWF. Anyway, let's see. Aside from Florence, let's see what's going to happen. Zonal flow across the northern U.S., so it should be kind of quiet. And then down in Texas and New Mexico, looks like that subtropical ridge starting to build in once again. So temperatures should come up and things will probably dry out a little bit. And where's Isaac? That's the other thing I'm looking for. So let me go through this and see if I can find it. I think that's it right there, kind of a little area of vorticity showing up. And it looks like that kind of shears out, I guess. Conditions down there probably not very favorable. Probably a combination of shear and probably very weak Coriolis force helping that circulation to fill. Looks like we can kind of track it here as an easterly wave, and I want to see where that ends up. Yeah, it looks like that hits Honduras and Nicaragua around the 18th. So I'm not too sure that's going to be coming up north. And then we have the other system off the coast of Belize and the Yucatan right there. That's the other thing I'm watching. There it is right now. And let's see what happens to that. Kind of a slow northward drift, kind of in this area. And I'm kind of just going by the vorticity. And looks like that drifts into the Gulf around the 13th or 14th. And looks like it weasels its way into the Texas coast around the 15th or 16th. So that may bring an increase in showers to that area right there. Okay, the long-awaited European model, let me show that to you, and let me check in on chat and make sure the stream is doing okay. Oh yeah, Ryan mentioning the loop-de-loop thing. Hurricane Jean, Hurricane Francis did that in 2004. And yeah, loopy. I always think of that SpongeBob song, the one about tying the shoes. All right, yeah, let's see. European model, let me bring that up. And this comes courtesy of F5 data. And I appreciate the permission to put these charts on for you guys. And this is, again, this is the European model. In fact, let me just put that. There it is right there. So down at the bottom you can see, okay, the runtime. Yeah, I want to make sure the valid time, there it is up there at the top. So starting out tomorrow morning, there's Florence coming into the lower right corner. And here it is, pretty much coming straight for the North Carolina coast. And looks like that makes landfall in the southern tip of North Carolina. Looks like that's going to be late Thursday. And there it is, making landfall, going straight in, not doing the loop-de-loop thing. And then raining itself out over North Carolina. This kind of suggests maybe a more widespread flooding event on Thursday and Friday. And then the remnants will move north into Virginia. So they'll be getting some flooding rains in that area Friday, Saturday, and possibly into Sunday. And probably more flooding rains up into West Virginia. And I would suspect that with the amounts of rains we're looking at, probably some major flood problems, not only in North Carolina and Virginia, but in the mountainous areas, Maryland, West Virginia, and southern Pennsylvania. I think there could be a lot of problems there. All right, and the European model was picking up a little bit on that little tropical disturbance in the Gulf. See it right down in this area. Looks like it brings that into Texas around the 14th or 15th. Looks like maybe kind of a weak tropical depression or very weak tropical storm. And then that comes in around the Corpus Christi area and out towards Laredo, so that'll stay pretty far to the south. Okay, let's see here. Back to the regular chart sequence. Oh yeah, the polar vortex very strong this month. You can see it right there across northern Canada. This is the European model, upper air. You can see these lobes kind of orbiting around each other here. The overall polar vortex is right there. And that's pretty strong for September. And I decided to look at the Climate Prediction Center to see what they're forecasting. And I was kind of surprised they were showing conditions there's a risk. Let me back that up. There's a strong likelihood of above normal. I'm not going to say strong. Increased chances of above normal conditions, especially out in the western areas and the central U.S. And pretty much nowhere in the U.S. looking for below normal temperatures. But precipitation, that kind of tells a story there. Above average precip all the way from the southern U.S. to the Gulf. And this is very classic El Nino. So it looks like maybe we're looking at a stronger storm track across the southern U.S. like that. Typically during La Nina, we have kind of a storm track like that. It's kind of dry and cold. And I think we're looking at more something like that this winter if that comes together. So yeah, I mean, the average temperatures will be a little bit higher in the central U.S., but very likely with this increased precip, the southern storm tracks, I think we may be looking at a slight increase in the probability of winter weather in the south. Maybe we'll have a few events coming up in November, December, and January. So we'll kind of see what happens when we get into as it gets closer in November. All right, one last look. There's that storm there coming up into North Carolina. There's that loop. And we'll see what happens with the 0Z and 12Z GFS. We may have a slightly different picture tomorrow when we look at that. So anyway, that's about all I got. Let me just look at chat real quick. Yep, it very well could be Category 5 as it approaches the Carolinas there. So this is definitely going to be a major system to watch. There's the possibility of widespread damage with this as it comes inland. Very significant storm surge, especially close to the eye and on the right side of the track there. So there could be a lot of flooding coming inland in that area there. Carl Burkhoff, yeah, I appreciate it. Appreciate the connections. Worst case scenario, straight up to gaps, severe storm surge, massive flooding over the barrier island chain and inland sections. Yeah, so if you're on those barrier islands, this is a storm that I would not play around with here. You definitely want to go inland. It's not just the storm that you have to worry about, but it's the aftermath, the lack of power and lack of infrastructure, the difficulty getting supplies in. That's usually the flip side of these kinds of events here. So definitely bear that in mind. Okay, well, that'll do it for tonight. I appreciate you all watching the webcast, and we'll be back tomorrow at the usual time, 7 p.m. with some new products, and we'll have an update there on Florence. So thank you all very much for joining, and we'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.